Let's Talk JMMA with Charlie Jewett from sogo-kaku.com. This is a podcast about the deep end of Japanese combat sports scene. I'm your host, Shu Hirata from On the Road Management. Now, let's begin. Hi, Charlie. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I hate to start with this, but I always have to ask you about this corona situation in Japan. I hear that like 3,000-4,000 people in Tokyo alone or something like that infected.
Yeah, it's getting worse. I think it's closer to 5,000.
Oh, so now this concerns.
Plus the media,
yeah.
The media is kind of going negative as well. There's reports that like hospital capacities have been filled. People are being turned away from hospitals. There's a big news story about a pregnant lady that got coronavirus that nobody would come get her from an ambulance, and then the baby died.
Well,
and it was all over the news.
Is that what it was? It was too.
No, just because there's nowhere to take them.
Yeah, this very interesting rules in Japan that if you call ambulance, right, before they take it to the hospital, those EMS guys has to actually call every hospital to make sure they will accept it. Then they'll go out there. So you could be sitting on the ambulance for 30-40 minutes.
Right. So there's this little panic kind of now that people are realizing it's now serious because people are being turned away from hospitals. They're just being told go home. You're not that bad. And then they die. So it's not good.
Bad. Actually, that's really good. But they got to the hospital and got rejected, basically.
Right. They'll get turned away.
To go home. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
very interesting. Sounds like it was in the U.S. last year. When hospital capacities were at full.
Oh, okay.
And then more related to RIZIN, did you see the news about Panchan Rina?
Yeah, I saw that. She got sick after the second shots and
she got really sick. She got an ambulance, took her to a hospital. She went into anaphylactic shock.
Ooh.
And she is not happy about it. She's been tweeting a lot about the vaccine recently.
I hate to say this, but it's 3 weeks till the fight though, so she might want to consider. Or RIZIN should actually even consider pushing that fight back to the October show.
She was talking about how she wasn't able to train because it was serious.
Right. But again, my first question was in October show, do you think it will be a problem? Because if there's more infected people out there, government might make some rules again that you can't be more than 5,000 people, or you can't even do the event and that type of stuff,
Well, it's hard to say what the government's going to do because it changes so often. It's almost impossible to plan anything. But the one consistent thing that I think that I've noticed is once an event has sold tickets, they've never made that event cancel.
That's true. Yeah, once the tickets are on sale.
Yeah, so
it has to go on basically.
I feel like if tickets have been sold, the events are fine. They'll just not allow them to sell any more tickets. Because unless things get really bad, we've never had an event where they've forced people to cancel it. The closest was the K1 show where they just made them.
That's true, right?
Everyone's address.
But they didn't listen to them, so they just went ahead and did the show. So, and it's not that they created many infected people from that show. So I think.
Yeah, most of the Japanese stuff is just the government asking people nicely to do something.
Right, exactly. It's just a request. Yeah. Right, No, I mean, so I guess then what they should do, what RIZIN should do is just announce all the rest of the year shows and just start selling tickets right now. Even without announcing card, then they could tell the government, well, it's tough. There's not much you could do.
Well, there's also even though the numbers are up, as I've been saying in the past couple of weeks, I think there's this general thing people are just kind of over it. Mm-hmm. People are refusing to quarantine, if that makes sense.
Oh, right.
Planes are full, people are out and about, people are out doing whatever they want to do.
I'm going to tell this on the record. Most of the people I know or seen on the SNS or friends, whatever that is, the Japanese people who actually went back to Japan and they're supposed to be quarantined for 14 days, none of them did. I know they're out playing around, drinking with friends,
They're doing the Dice Team impression, and they're going out that night and getting wasted at expensive bars.
Exactly, right. And some of the Olympic athletes broke that rules, right? I mean, there were some issues about it.
Yeah, it's really weird. My wife even told me some guy at her work or something like tested positive for the virus and was asked to stay home, but he was like, I was bored, so I just like went out to eat and did stuff. I'm like, that guy sounds like a complete dick.
Right. But, well, anyway, so before we get into the first topic, I was just going to mention about this ambulance issue. You know how the Japanese ambulance, when they come in, they would have to call all the hospitals and figure out where to take the, patients. In the UFC Japan show, remember when Mark Hunt broke Stefan Struve's jaw?
I think I vaguely remember. It was on a weekend. It was on a Sunday, right?
Right. But here's what it is. What happened? Like the ambulance was there. Of course, it was the 8 ambulance waiting on that show because that's the rules that UFC have, and they had the EMS guys there. But the problem was the EMS guy has no right to make any shots. They can't give out the shots. They're not licensed, allowed to. All they do is take the patient to the hospital. So Stefan needed to get some shots, right? Because he was in pain. But he couldn't do it, and they really couldn't understand what he was really asking for right there. So they could have called a doctor to get the shots, but couldn't explain the fact the EMS couldn't give him the shots. So he sat around for like 30, 40 minutes while those staff were calling, hospital to make sure they could accept him. Later, of course, he went back and complained to Dana White, and it was a huge issue.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Right.
That was a bad break. That was like straight down his jaw.
Right. But it's kind of weird, right? Like the ambulance gets there, but you have to call the ambulance. I mean, the hospital to make sure they accept it. So
my experience, like there's good things and bad things with the Japanese medical system. Right. The good things are like there's like universal healthcare and stuff like that.
Of course.
The bad things is like extremely long wait times.
Oh yeah, I know why. You make an appointment, but you still have to wait like 2 hours.
Yeah, my wife goes to the doctor and it's like a whole day thing. It's like, okay, I'm going at 10 a.m. Be back at like 5. So
exactly right. I think personally, I felt the doctor's a little too arrogant to make patients like that. I mean, why can't they make appointments and do according to what they're supposed to, especially regular walking up patient, That
was my thing too. I was just wondering, like, it has to be a more efficient way because I understand that there's like a bunch of old people in Japan that need like longer sessions with the doctor.
Sure.
So why don't you just have one doctor who's handling all the easy stuff and just getting people in and out?
Right.
And then one guy who's handling the more detailed consultations. That way you kind of have an express lane where people that don't, all they need is because in Japan you have to like go to the doctor to get your prescription renewed. You just can't do it at the pharmacy.
Well, I know they don't do it online. Here you send the information to the nearest pharmacy. You just go.
Yeah, so why can't they just have like an express lane doctor empty out 3/4 of the waiting room?
Right.
But I guess they just don't care.
Right.
They figure people just wait no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, they have. I mean, because I've been to many hospitals, not just for myself, but with the fighters. Mm-hmm. And every time I go through the procedure of surgeries or emergencies, I feel like they're just U.S. hospitals are 1,000 times more efficient than Japan. Yeah. Anyway, so let's get to the MMA topic, which is a RIZIN landmark they announced, which is the studio show by RIZIN. It's a new series. It's just geared on like a pay-per-view only. Mm-hmm. So I think this is sort of like a test that RIZIN is doing to develop the new source of income on this new era of COVID, where you might not be able to do too many like live shows.
Did Takamura say, I think, that they want to do it like once every 2 months?
Well, they were planning, right, yeah.
Which?
I can reveal this right now. They always had this plan of doing a small event.
Right.
The working title was a Studio RIZIN. They have been talking about it. But now I can reveal this about a year ago, even just go back to rewind. Do you remember they were talking about possible Mikuru Asakura versus Ren Hiramoto? Somewhere like Mount Fuji or like a Tokyo Tower kind of stuff. Actually, that was actually a realistic proposal. And they were going to do a Mount Fuji outdoor event on Mikuru versus Ren. And it's limited to only 100 people, right? And everything else is pay-per-view. So they're really geared towards streaming.
So would those 100 seats all be like $1,000 tickets?
No,
it's like
100 seats, 1 million yen each. So that's like a 9,000.
Yeah, it's like essentially 10,000.
Like grand, right?
Yeah.
And they were confident they could sell 100 at 10K.
Well, if you put Mikado on there, you could guaranteedly, I mean, you'd sell 100 easily, I feel like.
Right. So here's what it is. So they always had the plan to do this little small shows, which is like geared towards pay-per-view or streaming only. Because look at it. I mean, guy like Mikuru Asakura seems like makes most of the money coming from YouTubes and stuff like that, right? Related from YouTubes. So they already have that market. So that has to be the main reason why Sakakibara decided to do this, other than, of course, the fact that during the COVID, they couldn't do too many live shows, so why not do studio shows, right? Everything UFC Apex is doing,
You just got to go back to the fact that RIZIN finally realized that they can't have one source of revenue.
Yeah,
when COVID struck and the Fuji TV shows weren't able to happen like they were scheduled, all of a sudden RIZIN was like on the verge of dying, and they had to do the crowdfunding campaign. So now I feel like they're really trying to think of creative ways to make other money.
In a way, finally, right? Because
exactly.
Right. I mean, old days they had only three sources of revenue: one from the national television licensing, one ticket sales, and one sponsors.
Right.
But the sponsors goes away when you lose national televisions, right? So then you have the ticket sales left in that sense.
And this seems like, I mean, I don't know, like maybe slightly motivated by Fight Island or something like that, where they're like, wait a minute, if we can keep putting on, because if they can put on a smaller event with a high production value, it'd still be really cheap to put the event on.
Oh, way cheap.
Renting out like a huge stadium.
Right, and 5 fights only. And if they could sell the same amount of pay-per-view as their live arena shows, they have to be making money on that, right?
Plus, if they tie the pay to the pay-per-view revenue,
right?
I mean, what do they have to lose?
Exactly, and this is what 5,000 yen each, which is about $47. Whatever. Okay, so let's say it's $50. I have a feeling that Mikuru Asakura's followers alone will probably maybe 20,000 buys.
That sounds realistic. I think this is all
realistic, right?
Much like the women's kickboxing match, I feel like this is a test. They're kind of putting their toe in the water to see what happens.
Right.
Because Mikuru is really popular on YouTube, but YouTube is free. I think this is a test to see who will pay to see, because it's 5 fights on this event, but let's just be realistic. The fight people are paying for is the Mikuru Asakura fight. And so they're trying to see if these YouTubers will pay to watch him fight, and essentially just him fight.
Right, him, and also against Hagiwara, which is actually popular, right, among the underground hardcore fan, whatever, like.
Plus, they've been talking back and forth on Twitter, so there's a little bit of history between them.
Right. I'm very interested. Like, I know they will never tell me, but I know they will never announce, but I'm pretty sure Mikuru cut some kind of deal that he'll get a big share of pay-per-views.
Well, it has to be, because plus this seems right up his alley. I mean, it seems like they were really stroking his ego with this, kind of like, not necessarily that, but what he's obsessed with, not obsessed, but he's been concentrating on like his 1-minute fight show. And so I think he's really interested in kind of expanding martial arts through new avenues online. Right. And this is a good way to do that. Right. And actually, he is also marketing himself as not just a fighter anymore, right? It's like a businessman and the entrepreneur sort of. I think he has like 5 companies already, Well, in many ways, he's more of a personality now, I would feel like. Exactly. And I think recently he announced on Twitter that he just spent $1 million, almost $1 million, to buy some land. He'll build a condominium on this, so he'll make money on that kind of stuff. Yeah, my wife watches his YouTube channel, and the people that work on his YouTube channel are living in apartments that cost like $20,000 a month in Tokyo. So he's making a lot of money somehow. No, but that's good. Good for him. I guess he's a successful businessman in that sense, right? And which means that I think he's taking the right route, because, face it, Hagiwara is not going to beat Asakura. Unless it's like a freak knockout. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Hagiwara is not even that level at all. I mean, I can't believe that he himself doesn't realize that, right? Hey, I mean, it's a good opportunity for him as well. I heard rumors that Road FC, that he was kind of upset that he hadn't been fighting recently,
Yeah.
and that Road FC actually reached out to him, and he tweeted about it, didn't he?
Yeah.
Hagiwara tweeted about being contacted about some foreign promotion,
Right.
which people are assuming is just Road FC, because Road FC needed a new Japanese fighter to come over
for featherweight title fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah, in September, because we actually got contacted by Road FC too. They were interested in Uruka Sasaki.
Yeah, and this is actually kind of the perfect thing for RIZIN, because it keeps a popular fighter like Hagiwara in RIZIN. It gives him a big event, so he's happy. Right. And then, plus it's a fight that Asakura is probably going to win, so it makes Asakura's star even bigger. It's kind of win-win for them.
Right.
Plus,
and, as you can see,
I'm interested by this whole landmark thing about, like, where is it going to be?
Right. And here's what it is. Just like what happened to SHOOTO Watanabe, who fought the Kai Asakura, just because he fought Asakura, he's getting more gigs, a little bit more on YouTubes and everything else. So it's like in the pro wrestling world all days, like everybody wants to fight Ric Flair. It's like the same thing, right? Because he's there.
You get that rub. Like, even it's like going on a popular podcast like Joe Rogan or something. You get that rub. Right. Where you look back and all of a sudden your followers have increased too. So
yeah, exactly. So
Watanabe SHOOTO is a good example, because he's on this card, but I mean, before his fight with Asakura Kai, nobody was talking about him, and now he's kind of.
I hate to tell. I mean, I don't mean to insult him or anything like that, but he wasn't even fighting for like Pancras or SHOOTO league, so he was fighting a little bit even below that league, right? So it was even.
Was he Zest?
Right, Zest and Nexus and stuff like
Nexus,
that. So,
yeah.
It was almost a miracle that he even made it to the RIZIN. So, so his life changed after he fought Kai Asakura, obviously. I mean, after he was announced that he was fighting Kai Asakura, everything changed. And even me, I kind of watch his YouTube because he's kind of funny, right?
I will say that's. I'm also going to credit a little bit that with RIZIN, because I feel like the UFC has a clear template of the type of fighter they want.
Yeah.
And if you're that type of fighter, they're going to promote you that way. Whereas RIZIN takes what you are and just leans into it.
Yeah.
And so SHOOTO Watanabe is like this really awkward, high-pitched kind of guy. And they just leaned into it. Kind of like, and like the same with Naoki, who's like kind of shy.
Exactly.
RIZIN just leans into it, lets you be who you are. And people like all different types of people. So fans get attracted to all the different types of different fighters.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the criticisms sometimes UFC gets, is like everything looks the same in UFC, but that's how their branding is. But in a way that almost all the fighters almost look the same, except the real recognizable top guys. But anyway, so far 5 fights are announced, 5,000 yen for RIZIN landmark, and I did see some of the criticism from the fans that it's only 5 fights, and it's still like almost the same price, or even higher than the regular RIZIN shows.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like more of like boxing, where people are just paying for the main event.
Exactly, that's my point, right? Yeah, they're just paying for the main event. Who cares about the preliminary, right?
Exactly.
Like, I mean, I don't even know who fights in undercard of Woodley versus Paul today.
It won't even affect the pay-per-view buys, so
nobody really cares. But again, everybody else makes money, and the RIZIN, same case. If they're doing this every other month, top of the live shows, which means more spots are better for fighters.
So this is my dream. Like I was joking with a friend about this, about the landmarks, because they kind of hinted they're going to be doing it at famous Japanese locations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my dream would be to do it at Miyajima, on like the floating island kind of thing.
Nice.
I know Victoria's Secret did a run show there.
Right.
So I know they're open to people using it. I feel like it'd be so expensive that it'd be awesome.
I think exactly. I was just thinking the same thing, because just like I mentioned, like the reason why they're looking at the Mount Fuji was because there's a huge famous music festival in Japan called Fuji Rock.
Right.
So they wanted to go to that place, and they were thinking about it on the foot of Tokyo Tower, those landmark places. But the problem is that if you do that, you might end up costing more than doing the regular arena shows.
Oh,
yeah.
A lot of those places, I mean, even if you close it down for a day just for yourselves, they're losing so much money in tourism and other things. You have to make it worth their while.
I don't think you can close the day anyway, you know. So
exactly.
you have to maneuver something, you know.
Yeah.
Actually, Japan is very known for hard to get a permit, and that's one of the reasons why the Japanese film industry are having a difficulty shooting car chase scenes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
in the Japanese film, car chasing sucks big time.
Well,
It's just you can't do it, you know.
I actually read a story recently. It's funny you say that. It said during Tokyo Drift, they didn't have permits to film in Shibuya.
Yeah.
And so they hired a guy to get arrested. They hired a guy to say that he was the guy in charge, and his job was to get arrested. And they just filmed it in Shibuya without permission. And then he got arrested, and they just paid his fines and all that stuff.
No, they do that. And actually, famous Takeshi Kitano half joked about this, that when he goes to Hollywood, you know, union rules, so everybody gets the chairs and you're eating, you know, nice lunch, you know, under the canvas camp and everything else. But in Japan, all the staff are sitting on the, you know, like a street eating bento and stuff. And once he said he was shooting on the street, no permit. And next thing you know, his DP, the cameraman, they were gone. And he was wondering where they are. And next thing you know, they were running down the street and the cops are chasing them. So,
yeah, that's just weird. You think they'd be more friendly.
Yeah, exactly. So here's what it is. So I don't think it's really realistic for RIZIN to go to all these famous places to do these RIZIN landmark shows.
Yeah, unless for some reason the landmark wants to get like free promotion.
Exactly, right.
But most of those places are so famous that they don't need promotion.
Oh, and besides, think about the insurance you have to pay if it's like historical.
Well, I'm just like thinking like
ways, you know.
It's one of those things where it's just not going to be as cool as what it sounds like. What ends up being delivered isn't going to be what your mind goes to, because when they say historical landmark, I'm like, are they going to have a fight at Meiji Shrine, or are they going to have a fight?
I'm going to do a research on it. I don't know if it's Genki Sudo or somebody did some shows at Temple in the past.
Oh, it's part of his band?
I forgot. I'm going to find out. But I think it was some kind of grappling show or something. So at some temples or something like that, I guess it can be possible. But I don't know if that's going to be a landmark. You know what I mean? Like,
just really hope that the Buddhist monks or the Shinto monks are fans of Mikado Asakura.
True. Yeah. Right. So I think in terms of a landmark, maybe they could go around the maybe famous studio or live house or something like that. I don't know. Again, then it doesn't make sense, right? Because I think the studio show is what they're looking to do. It seems like.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then one of the concerns that I would have if I RIZIN is that then that's going to make them look a little bit like ABEMA TV shows, which I guess they're like sort of like competitors in Japan, right? So.
What do you mean? They do the in-studio shows?
Yeah, like studio shows. Like that's what ABEMA TV does, pretty much.
Yeah, they just have to make sure they make it look different. I mean,
right, somehow different. That's why maybe they made it like a landmark instead of a studio RIZIN. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Yeah.
Because ABEMA has like a very distinctive look to its production value. So I feel like RIZE should be able to differentiate itself. But I mean, RIZIN should be able to differentiate itself. Right.
So we'll see what kind of revenue they're going to come up with, and if they do it and make sense, I think they're going to continue doing this series.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a second event, we'll know that it was successful. I think this is just a first.
Right.
Kind of
we'll see if
probe and see how it goes.
Yeah, and I'm hearing. Did they announce more future shows, RIZIN, in terms of like October, November, or December, or?
They announced the Yokohama show in October
24th.
And then I think they just said that there's 4 more events this year.
Yeah.
They've announced the Yokohama show, and I assume everyone's assuming the other one's the New Year's Eve show.
Right. So Yokohama is October 24th, and Deep actually is doing the show on October 23rd.
Yes.
The day before. And
yes.
We can talk about this one because they're putting a lot of fights on. Like Deep just announced a bunch of fights on many shows, right? Including.
Yeah, I mean, Deep just announced a ton of stuff going on in September and October. It's like they have a ton of fights they have to get done before the end of the year.
Yeah, it seems like
one of the days in October, they're doing 2 events on one day. So, I mean, they're really just pumping it out.
Right. And doing the deep jewels too, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's like, I didn't even count, but that must be like almost close to 100 fights. Who knows?
Yeah, they have, plus they're doing a big amateur event for deep jewels.
Exactly, right.
So, I mean, that's 6 events in 2 months, I think.
Well, here it is. And let's look at this, because we do see a couple of the fighters who is familiar with the RIZIN fans in the card too. Guys like Judy Ohara or Tetsuya Seki, right?
Ito, yeah.
Ito, right. So, I mean, obviously, people kind of knows Deep and RIZIN is sort of like, RIZIN, Deep is sort of like a minor league RIZIN now. So they get to use the RIZIN fighters.
Well, it seems like a big part of Deep's business model right now is producing the talent for RIZIN. I mean, I haven't done the numbers, but I think it's fair to say that no one's contributed more fighters to RIZIN than Deep. And these shows seem to be a mixture of kind of like veterans fights are half of the card, and then the other half of the card is just a bunch of like rising prospects. And they're just kind of trying to build the next generation of talent, it looks like.
Right. And here's what it is, though. For a Japanese hardcore fan's point of view, I think also, besides the Judy Ohara and Tetsuya Seki and those rising fighters, there's 2 big surprises, which is the SHOOTO's former champion, Fukuda's on the card.
Yes.
And also, I think it was who else? There was some Zest champion. Kogane, who is a Zest champion, right? Who is on the card. So basically, they're picking up smaller promotions champions into Deep now.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at it from the outside, but my opinion is during the pandemic, no one's been putting on more events than Deep.
Yeah.
And SHOOTO's events on Abima TV looked like almost like ghost towns. There's not really that many people there in attendance. And maybe people are just wanting to go to Deep because they're the ones putting on fights.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. And right. So it seems like, and also, I think it's almost obvious to most of the Japanese fighters that if you win in Deep, you get a chance to go fight for RIZIN.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the time of a pandemic, when most of anybody is almost reluctant to travel to outside the country, you feel like that's the best choice you have, right, on your hand.
Well, plus, I mean, Deep is run by Saeki, and wasn't Saeki kind of the PR guy for Pride?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, when it was he was. I think he had the title of the head of PR or something like that back in Pride.
Well, I mean, he has pretty close connections with Sakakibara.
Sure, and it's obvious that Deep is very close with RIZIN, and I'm telling this on the record. Like sometimes, like these days, I'm having a little difficulty scoring comp tickets for our sponsors and stuff because there's so much limited seats available on RIZIN.
Yeah,
if I can get through with the RIZIN people to get a ticket, I go through Mr. Saeki-san, and he will score for me. So, so that tells you, right, something.
I will say one of the funnier fights on this one on the Deep 103 card is Super Megaton himself is fighting this guy named Saint.
Oh, I know.
And Saint, I feel like must be like a GI or something. I don't know. He's like a big black guy. I don't know what he's doing in Japan. I just assume he's a GI, but he knocked out his last opponent in his first Deep show in like ridiculous fashion. It's it was almost like the fight didn't even happen. It kind of seriously messed up. So
that
kind of interested to see how that goes because heavyweight's so tiny.
The Japanese boy who got knocked out by the big boy, he's actually a decent wrestler from Japan University. And he actually works with. This is a name you probably haven't heard in a while, but he works with Mr. Maximo Blanco.
Oh yeah, I know him.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that doesn't matter how good of a wrestler you are when a 265-pound giant hits you right in the face.
I know. But also, let me tell you another thing about him is that he's also a big Japanese guy, right? So he on the other Deep show, he works as a security guard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he's actually pretty close with working with Deep in that sense.
That was interesting because
another chance,
his opponent Saint He trains at the Y&K Sports Academy.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've noticed, I think that's a gym that's closely affiliated with Deep.
Yes.
Because I think Deep actually opened a Deep Jewels ladies only gym inside of there.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the girls that are on these amateur events are coming from that as well. But with the Deep Jewels 34 card coming up, unlike the last event, this event has a lot more prospects on it.
Oh yeah, I know. Let's talk about that because I'm surprised that Izawa is going down to 105.
Well, she's not on this card. She's on a Deep card.
Deep card, right? Yeah.
And so, Deep 34 has a lot of prospects on it. The ones that, I mean, what I'll say is interesting about this is Deep seems to be like leaning into the microweight division now.
Yes.
Which, for those who are kind of old fans, just think that is like Satoko Shinashi division.
Shinashi, right? And yeah.
Yeah. And so, but there's a bunch of these girls are like, there's like 4 girls in the microweight division fighting on this event.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of interesting. But this event's the big fight probably people care about in the media and the fans is the Kate Lotus fight. She's kind of like the hot fighter from Kobe, and Deep has been promoting her a lot. They've had some videos with her training with Mika Nagano and Mizuki Furuse. But,
yeah, actually, I've noticed that Deep Jewels start pumping up more videos on YouTube, introducing those girls, and not just Kate Lotus. I'm surprised that Furuse-san, who is very young and became a mother, apparently married to a very rich family, right?
Oh, she has to. I mean,
they live in a huge house and stuff like that. All of a sudden.
She has a huge house, and she drives a Porsche, and she appears to be a construction worker. So I feel like her family or her husband's family has a lot of money.
Really? Or maybe they own construction business. Who knows? I mean,
but I mean, she has like a Porsche SUV and a house that's massive by Japanese standards. But she's popular because she won that. No, she made it to the finals of that reality show on Abema.
Yes, Abema, yes.
And Itsuki won that, and that's how she got the ONE FC contract.
Mm-hmm.
But Mizuki was popular on that show, which is why she's still popular. And she's kind of had mixed results. And I think her last fight was like a fight in RIZIN where she received a lot of criticism for kind of being like a pushover.
Right.
But she like lost, I think, in like 20 or 30 seconds to, maybe not that fast, but she lost very quickly to Kanasura. But now she's had a kid. She's married to a Deep fighter. And she's back. This fight's at atomweight, but I think they'll have her go back down to microweight. And I'd say that
makes sense, right, for Deep Jewels to explore that division because only in Asia there's small girls like that, you know, like almost, you know.
Well, they're doing what I think Invicta should have done, in that promotions need to be able to protect themselves. So it's great that Deep Jewels has a deep atomweight division, but as soon as you win a title, you're going to go bye-bye. And there's no other division, there's no other promotion that has microweight. And so this will allow them to hold on to some of those fighters a little bit longer.
Right. Well, actually, this is true for the fact because I did talk to her, but Shannon Knapp did think about 95 pounds and under division.
Oh, interesting.
I remember we talked about it, but it never got developed. But maybe she's still thinking. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure they're going to add a number of shows, right, under the Access company. So then maybe Deep Jewels could go back to maybe do some kind of deals with the Invicta again, so they can go back and forth, and they can
that'd be great.
Up the 95 divisions altogether too. You know?
Yeah, that'd be great. And it's kind of funny because speaking of how promotions promote fighters, and you mentioned it, I've noticed as well. Deep Jewels has been releasing a lot more promotional content recently, and they've been promoting one girl as a cosplayer. One girl, they're promoting her as the smallest fighter ever to fight in Deep Jewels. So it's just kind of a funny way to promote somebody. Debut.
Yeah, my son is here. Mama, would you please? Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Anyway, you know, we get a comment. I'm gonna have to mention this. The Mr. Jamie says, "I wish Maximo Blanco was still fighting. He would have been great in RIZIN featherweight division." I totally agree, and actually, we even talked about it. And I asked Maximo, "So do you think you can fight for RIZIN featherweight division?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." And he's like, "Do you think you could beat anybody there?" He's like, easy, right? All right, how much do you weigh? He's like, "Oh, I would hop on the scale, take a photo, and send it to me right now. He was like almost like 80 kilos. I'm like, forget it.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, so go back to a.
But what's funny about Deep Jewels 34
Mm-hmm.
is that before the event happened, Deep announced a bunch of women's fights that are kind of like bigger fights that aren't happening on Deep Jewels. They're happening on Deep cards.
Yeah.
And so the big women's fights for Deep are all happening on Deep. So it's Seika Izawa is fighting Siwoo Park in a 49-kilo fight, which means only one thing, that the winner is going to RIZIN.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, that's a real top fight, right? I mean,
yeah, because Deep and Deep Jewels don't have a 49-kilo division; they only have 48. So 49 seems like a very standout number when that was announced. And then the other big fight is Miki Matono is back to action. The former champion is coming back, and I think there's another one. Oh, and the other girl that fought in RIZIN, Edu Takeyabashi, the hot prospect, is also fighting on a Deep card. So a lot of these girls that have kind of already started to get a following, Deep, I think, is moving them over to Deep cards to help sell Deep tickets.
I think RIZIN have to start developing new challenges for Hamasaki.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just basically that's what it is. I mean, that division is dying. I mean, the entire women's division is dying in a way.
Well, and it's interesting because it feels like Deep and Deep Jewels have kind of taken up this, like, we have to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
And so Deep Jewels is holding these amateur events to find new talent. And then Deep Jewels is, as opposed to a couple of years ago where it was like a bunch of old veterans, now it's a bunch of young prospects, all of them probably having 4 or 5 fights. And I was actually talking to a photographer friend of mine who's been taking pictures in Japan for many years. And he was saying they're promoting these girls too quickly now.
Mm-hmm.
Because a girl like Kate Lotus, who's only been training for 1-2 years tops, she should be brought up a little bit slower. I mean, putting her on a main event now with all this pressure, if she loses, she might quit or retire.
Right.
And you kind of might, and it's kind of like you might ruin these people before they reach their full potential.
Well, I think Saiki know better. So even though putting her on a main event, maybe they're putting her against a not so good fighter, or at least the fighter has a good possibility that she will win, kind of stuff.
Yeah. So that's what he was saying. My opinion is, I think they're trying to take advantage of RIZIN right now. And RIZIN's kind of created a lot of popularity.
Mm-hmm.
And the sport's more popular now than it has been probably in 15, 20 years.
Sure.
And all these young people want to do it now. So get them into it, get them experience, and start moving them up the ranks and start no longer having to put these 45-year-old fighters on these cards. You can now put 18 and 20-year-olds on and start building a new fan base.
And out of any young ones, even though we talked about Mitsuki Furuse and Izawa, and I think another girl has to be a prospect is Sakura, right? I mean,
yeah, but I mean, if you've been following her on social media recently, she's been hanging out with a bunch of boys. Doesn't seem to be training so often.
Oh, Jesus.
It sounds like pretty much everything Aoki said might be true. She's just a lot of trouble, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see, But let's hope. Like, she's a good talent,
But
now,
what
go ahead.
What they've been doing recently, I mean, they discovered Seika Izawa last year, and she's probably the future of the women's divisions in Japan. They discovered Miki Matono. I mean, Saudi Oshima. These names are being thrown out all the time now. All these girls made their debuts in 2020, so it's kind of crazy. So they are finding some diamonds amongst these girls that they just keep pumping up.
I suggested Mr. Saeki to tell Izawa to still building up and go for 115.
Yeah, that was weird to me. Why would you cut down? I mean, she wasn't cutting weight for 52 kg.
She wasn't cutting weight, so it was easy to go down to 105.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd go the opposite route. While she's young, I'd start bulking up.
Oh, I know, but I think here's what it is. I think that most of the Japanese fighters who's actually looking at the outside Japan, because Izawa is actually interested in fighting for Victor and maybe looking into possibly another promotion. But I think they have this set mind. If you go to outside Japan, they have to go down to the weight class because they just have a disadvantage, which it's not the same for every fighter.
She's so young, and it's not like she doesn't have a lot of muscle mass.
Yep.
So I feel like if she went to the U.S. or she started doing like a physical strength and conditioning program,
right,
you could grow into 52 kg. But
exactly, it takes like 2-3 years to go up to 115. Doesn't have to do immediate stuff, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but right now I think she feels that she wants to try 105, and then we'll see. Is what they're thinking, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now it comes to the female fights. Let's talk about one championship because it seems like it's gonna go ahead with a show, right? I mean, and Itsuki and Mei Yamaguchi left Japan.
Yeah, they all left, so they're all showing up in Singapore now. It looks like it's actually going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
So Elise Anderson arrived, Itsuki arrived, Yume arrived, so should be good. And
yeah, I think this is going to be a good show.
It's a great event. I mean, they've put together a great card.
Yes, the best prospect you can find at 105, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm pretty much
on the free agent.
I'm very interested in the results of the tournament and this opening round in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ONE FC, have they handled it terribly? Yes. They haven't promoted some of the fighters the way they should be, I don't think. This event's been kind of bumbled in the fact that the one girl got kicked out of the tournament, then fought again and got brought back into the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of strange. But I like the whole blood sport / kickboxer angle of having a fighter from each country
mm-hmm.
and making it kind of like this international tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And bringing in someone like Ham Sohee really legitimizes it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
More in the United States or North American side, because it seems like not many, actually, literally nobody's really like recognizing this show at all, you know?
No, that's what happens when your American representative is Elise Anderson, though. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I was cracking up. Did you see what her comments were ahead of this?
No, what was her comment?
I think she said, I'm paraphrasing, that she had outgrown Invicta and that she has no plans to return and that she likes ONE Championship, which is hilarious because I think she went 2-1 in Invicta and one of those wins was a split decision. So I'm just like,
well, I guess she has to say that, right, for the ONE Championship, you know?
Yeah, talk about burning your bridges. I mean,
oh, I know, but the fact, I don't know why she did that because, you know, as you know, the Invicta just did the show last night. It was a good show.
Yeah.
It's night before. I mean, you know, it was entering a new era, like the show title. And I'm
I don't know why I would say that because Invicta has new owners now. They're probably better than they've ever been.
Right, and they're going to add more number of shows. Chances are that if she loses to Itsuki Hirata, when is she going to get a next fight?
Well, that's my thing. I was going to say is, I mean, does she do no research? ONE Championship, the amount of Americans they use regularly is less than 5 people.
Oh, I know. Exactly. I know that. Right. And I can't blame them because of the Corona. Singapore government is one of the toughest and strictest. So what the heck, you know?
But even before then, it was like they bring Americans over to lose. They're the Asian market, and they want to be popular in the Asian countries. It makes sense. They like the only people they have that they care about are like Eddie Alvarez, Demetrius Johnson, people like that.
Right. And Sage Northcutt, is he ever going to fight again? I mean,
who knows? Because he was scheduled to fight Shinya Aoki, then he got sick. But because he had COVID pretty bad. But I mean,
Shinya Aoki actually even complained on Instagram Live to ONE Championship.
Shinya Aoki also told Sage Northcutt to eat shit. So
yeah, exactly right. So, but he's a pro wrestler, so that's okay. You know.
You can also tell about who ONE FC, ONE Championship wants to win, because some people have been complaining about how they thought tournaments should normally be set up where you have like the number 1 seed face the last seed.
Of course.
Where this tournament, that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be more of like, these are who we want to win. These are the matches we want.
I mean, obviously, they want Itsuki to win this one.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's so obvious the way the brackets are set up. And
what markets do they care about? They like China, so they give Meng Bo, the girl from India, who's quite popular. And but they don't really care about the Indian market that much, so that kind of makes sense. They want to win there. And they give Stamp Fairtex the opportunity. Stamp Fairtex is the only girl coming into the tournament off of a loss, and they're giving her opponent to try to revenge that and get her back into the popular graces. So, but
well, yeah, it was good. Elise will probably make more than this fight than the Invicta champ makes. probably.
Solid point.
She is now a full-time fighter. Last year she was working in the COVID ward. Wow, that's.
I will say that is one of the nice things about One Championship is if you go back and you read some of the interviews, One Championship does a great job of promoting their fighters.
Oh yeah.
And they release a ton of content. If you go back and read some of their old stuff on VV May Yamaguchi, when she signed, she talked about how before One Championship, I mean, she had to work these weird jobs. I mean, she wasn't making any money fighting. It's kind of like, where is this going? And kind of like a One Championship essentially saved her. They allowed her to become a full-time fighter and do what she wants to do because they paid her way more than anyone else had ever been paying her before.
Of course, because May used to fight for Shooto and Deep Jewels and stuff like that. I know exactly how much those girls are making, so of course. But no, I have to retrieve my word to that comment. And it says at least we'll probably make more than the fight the Invicta champion makes. Maybe not anymore because Invicta has new owners. And I know we used to manage some of the champions. I know how much champions were making back then. And it's actually competitive to some of the Japanese male fighters are making in One Championship. So maybe not. If you lose,
I was talking about it. I was talking about that earlier today. I mean, One Championship seems like this strange promotion where some fighters get paid really, really well.
Well, some
fighters get paid like almost nothing.
Yeah, DJ Eddie and Sage, that's a different issue, right? Like I'm pretty sure like Roger Gracie gets paid well, right? Got paid well.
Well, I mean, Ham Sohee, they said that she got paid 3 times her RIZIN salary, which just seems nuts because she was getting paid $30,000 to fight for RIZIN.
So 90,000?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, you know what? Actually, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be even surprised if they paid her $100K signing bonus, actually. Because I know they have paid signing bonus to some of the top fighters. I know they have paid a monthly salary. I can't mention, but there are a couple of fighters who's on a monthly salary contract.
Well, I know one it makes no sense to me. There's the Korean fighter, Song Gaeon, who's been on a monthly salary for like 5 years and has yet to fight for the promotion. So I'm kind of wondering what's happening there.
Well, and let's see is she happy with getting monthly salary or she's unhappy not getting fights? Is she like vocal about anything? Or?
No, I think she's very happy getting a monthly salary and drinking tapioca on the beach.
And then actually you're killing the athletes though. Then she's probably not thinking about fighting, right?
Yeah.
If it's 5 years, and if she's happy with it, I guess she's happy. Now, let me ask you this: what's your predictions of who's going to win this tournament?
I'm going to throw this out there. Okay, so I like all these fighters. This is not an atomweight tournament. This is a strawweight tournament. You need to remember that One Championship is nuts, and they decided to rename everything. And no matter what anybody says, all I've seen this week of all these fighters is pictures of them cutting weight. Yeah. So you can't tell me that there's no weight cutting in One Championship. All I've seen all week are pictures of them stepping on scales. They all weigh over 54 kilos.
You just have to pass that dehydration test.
Yeah, they're allowed to weigh, 52 kilos on the last day? So, I mean, you can weigh in at 115 pounds, so they're not atom weights. So, Ham Sohee should be the favorite, but some of these girls might be bigger than her. Right. So that might be kind of the difference maker. And her opponent in the opening round is kind of hard to measure because she's undefeated.
Yes.
That being said, Sohee Ham should be the clear favorite to win this tournament. I mean, she's a very good grappler, and she's difficult to submit. And none of these girls are like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt aces that are going to take her down and submit her. So, if anything, I think. Plus, if people kind of forget, in the last Hamasaki fight, she wasn't really winning the striking exchanges. It was the grappling exchanges that she used to help even the odds in the fight.
Right.
So I think she's the most well-rounded fighter. She's the most experienced fighter, and she's got to be the favorite. But that being said, this tournament has a bunch of young prospects in it, and you have no idea what any of them could do. So it's going to be hard to tell, but I pick her.
Yeah, I have to agree with that because Sohee Ham's the opponent, even though she's the opponent, she has been fighting nobody. Right, yeah. So it really doesn't matter. And even though Sohee Ham ended up fighting Stamp, right? If she wins, if the Stamp wins on the semifinal, as long as Sohee Ham plays smart and does not just
Yeah, I mean,
striking, and she should be fine with that too.
plus, I mean, Stamp's a good kickboxer, yes, but I mean, so Han will just take her down.
Right. But let me ask you this though: have you ever seen Min Bo's recent fights?
Ming Bo is awesome. I wrote an article on her a couple days ago.
Mm-hmm.
She's part of this really cool generation of Chinese women. I mean, she, Weili Zhang, and Yang Wu all made their debuts the same year.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually beat Zhang Weili.
Right, yeah.
And she's just cool. I mean, she's just fun to listen to. She's got a unique personality. And, I mean, she's been knocking people out.
Right. I think I have a feeling she's going to make it to the final, to tell the truth.
So my opinions on the tournament are just based off of looking at it. Ham So-hee, Meng Bo, and Itsuki all stand out to me.
Yeah.
I mean, Ham So-hee's already fought the Ukrainian girl. I think her name's Alina or Alona.
Yeah.
And she beat her pretty one-sidedly.
Sure. Right. So, I mean, if Meng Bo and Itsuki wins, they will have to fight in the semifinal, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and so I think Itsuki's kind of this interesting phenomenon because she's so popular, you forget she's only had 4 pro fights.
Oh, I know.
And it's kind of like, I mean, her last opponent, I think her record might be negative now.
Mm-hmm.
It's either 50-50 or negative. So Itsuki, it's just kind of like, she's looked really good, but she really hasn't beaten anyone of the level of some of the high-level girls in this tournament.
Yeah, so you have to understand, in any sports, you have to compete against a better athletes to get better. You know what I mean? And you can't be competing against somebody who's not good as you.
Yeah,
make you better. It doesn't happen. No. So. And
Ritu Phogat, the girl from India, very popular wrestler, she has to be probably the bottom seed of this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she lost, I think, to B Win, who's been beaten by several people in this tournament. But B Win's just like a good journeyman fighter, but she's not the same level as some of the girls in this tournament. And Ritu's only been fighting, I think, for less than 2 years maybe. Mm-hmm. She's just essentially a wrestler who just tries to take you down. And when she gets to some of the tougher people that know what to do when you're down, I think she's going to be in trouble.
Now, did one ever announce what would have happened if any of these girls miss weight or fail the hydration test?
Probably nothing, because we know that all they do is they just act like it didn't happen unofficially.
I hope they don't do that. Do they have an alternate?
There is an alternate. The Mei Yamaguchi fight is the alternate fight.
Oh, okay. So Mei's alternate. Okay.
There is an alternate, which is good. I think every tournament should have an alternate.
Sure, of course.
RIZIN taught us that lesson with their kickboxing tournament.
Oh, yeah, always have an alternate. I don't know why they did that. Right? Yeah.
And Mei's opponent is a girl who's never fought outside of Brazil, so she's impossible to measure.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
hey, but Brazil, right? It could be dime a dozen, or it could be somebody really tough. So who knows?
Right. I mean, I think most of the girls she's beaten are just kind of like newbies as well. So it's just kind of impossible to rank her at this point.
Sure. All right. So, I mean, I think we both agree that Seo Hee-ham is the favorite, and probably the run-up will be maybe Min Bo, Yeah. But that's going to be a very interesting fight. I mean, I'm very excited to see this. And, I just hope, some of the winners, I hope like one championship start actually maybe even dealing with Invicta, go back and forth and stuff like that.
I'll say what this reminds me of is people don't really talk about it ever. Is Bellator had a women's tournament with Megumi Fuji a long time ago, and that tournament was also pretty stacked. It had Megumi Fuji, Carla Esparza, Jessica Aguilar, Zoila Frosto, Lisa Ellis, all of whom at the time were like top fighters. And this tournament reminds me of that, and that these are a lot of like young prospects and veterans who all kind of represent a lot of potential in the atomweight division. So that's what makes this tournament fun to me.
Oh yeah, I know. Man, I mean, I still think about the Bellator tournament since you mentioned. Actually, I think that was first planning to do at 125, right? And I think Megumi Fuji signed it. She was willing to do 125, but after that they changed to 115. I think because of Megumi Fuji, which was actually interesting development, I thought,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy when you look at the people who were in it, because at the time you're like, who's Carla Esparza? And it's like, oh, she became the UFC champion.
Oh, so. I know. And it's amazing that I think Carla lost to Megumi in like less than 2 minutes kind of stuff, right back then.
It was the second round.
There in that show, yeah.
It was like a crazy, like rolling. She had like Megumi did one of her favorite things I've ever seen. She did like a rolling double wrist lock. It was kind of crazy. So
you know, I'm gonna tell you this. I think it was 3 weeks ago. I actually had a long conversation with Megumi, and at the end, I asked her, "Hey, what if you were? It was a UFC women's division when you were young, or like let's say if you're like 20 years old right now. What do you think how you do in UFC?" And she's like, "Yeah, I think I can be a champion."
It's funny you say that because people talk about Ronda Rousey and the UFC a lot. They forget that there was a time before Ronda Rousey that the UFC was interested in bringing women over.
Oh, yeah.
And they had the girl was actually in one of their video games. What was her name? Megumi fought her and beat her.
Erica Montoya.
Yeah, Erica Montoya. They thought about bringing her over as the first.
Oh, she was a commentary for one of the shows in the UFC, too. They booked her commentary, which was amazing, right, back then.
And they actually put her in the game, I think. She was in the video game.
That's another talent. I always say this, but somebody should find out what she's doing right now and do some Netflix documentary kind of thing, because I would love to.
Cool.
She basically disappeared all of a sudden. She was one of the biggest name, right, on the women's MMA back then.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so yeah, this is really good for women's MMA. We're very excited, you know. And so let's get to the next topic, which I wanted to mention a little quick, is the SHOOTO's next show has this guy named Mr. Yamato Nishikawa, which is
he's fighting Tencho.
Oh yeah, I know Tencho, right? Which is another.
I actually went to Tencho's restaurant like last month.
Really? Okay, Tencho is just for people who doesn't know. He's Mr. Kawana who fights for RIZIN.
Yes,
right? And he works as a manager for what kind of restaurant?
He works at a shabu shabu restaurant.
Shabu shabu restaurant, right, yeah.
And it's like Hokkaido shabu shabu. The specialty, I think, is lamb and sheep, and he has like a SHOOTO belt on display when you go in.
Really?
And he gives a bonus. You get extra meat if you tell him you're a RIZIN fan.
Really?
So he has like bonuses for his fans. Yeah, it's great.
Right. I mean, and he's a lot of people don't remember he actually fought for World Series of Fighting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was the first Japanese guy who signed to World Series of Fighting. Unfortunately, he didn't do well, but anyway, so he's fighting a 18-year-old named Yamato Nishikawa. Now,
he was on a 9-fight win streak or something.
Yes. And he's 18 years old. And he used to be living in Sapporo, which is like northern end of Japan. So he really didn't have too many competitions or a good training environment. Moved to Tokyo. Now just storming through the competition.
Yeah.
Now, what is your impression of Mr. Nishikawa?
I mean, to be 18 years old and already have the experience he has is kind of nuts. And looking into this fight, I mean, I like Tencho, but Tencho's kind of fallen on some rough times. He's lost 2 in a row, but I mean, both those losses were to solid opponents.
Right.
So you have to take that into account. But you also look at Nishikawa and be like, this guy's on a 9-fight win streak and seems to really be peaking, like really hitting his stride. And I feel like he's got to be the favorite going into the fight. That's just me.
Yeah, here's what it is. I think if he beats Tencho Kawana, he don't have anybody left to fight in SHOOTO anymore.
Right.
So natural move for him to even go to the RIZIN, but if you have some problem with the SHOOTO RIZIN kind of stuff, if he can't do it, then he's gonna have to look into the outside Japan after this, I think. Yeah,
just because I mean, SHOOTO seems to really just become like a feeder league at this point. So if you're serious about fighting as a career at this point, I feel like you have to move on.
Right, but remember, the SHOOTO seems like they're feeder league for one championship, but it's not like all the champions are going there. In fact, no champions went there, pretty much, right?
Yeah, it seems like one championship's predominantly interested in younger Japanese fighters. And so they're not really interested in, they want to make champions. They don't want someone that's already a champion, is what it seems to be. Well, so they want people like Itsuki, they want people like Ryoto Sawada and people like that.
Sure, then they should be picking up Nishikawa then.
Yeah, exactly.
18. You know, I mean, I hate to do it. I don't know who manages him, but I mean, if nobody does, I might even go reach out to him because you got to be a bad manager if you can't sell this guy.
Well, I mean, as a professional fighter too, with a 9-fight win streak, you got to think he's in his stride. So now's the time to make money.
Right, and if he wins next round, that's 10-fight win streak, and he's going to have a SHOOTO title. He's 18.
Yeah.
You know.
So time to go to RIZIN, time to go to PFL if that's an option, time to go to Bellator, time to go somewhere.
Well, I mean, if I were his manager, I would actually even call UFC first and see if they're interested. But then I'm going to get to this next point. But even though I have a feeling if I were his manager and if I even call UFC, I have a feeling they will pass on him still because of the fight style.
Okay.
And the opponents he's been beating, which is not too impressive, you know?
True, but would you maybe try to get him on the Asian Contender Series or something like that?
I would love to, but if it happens next year. But I can tell this on the record right now because I think people knows. But you know, Tatsuro Taira, who is the flyweight champion, who also 21 years old, prodigy. Mick Maynard thought that he's not that exciting enough, so he passed on signing him. So hurdles are pretty high right now, right?
Yeah. Okay. So you got to.
Nishikawa likes to fight off his back, right? Most of the time. So
the moral of the story is, if you're not like Iri Prohachin, just spinning elbow, knocking people out, UFC's not interested.
Not necessarily have to spinning elbow, but I think you have to be a little bit more dominant and finish earlier if you're fighting much lesser guys.
Okay, makes sense.
I really think so. That's the feeling I got. That's not the exact word he said, but
yeah.
Which makes sense because right now, most of the time, unfortunately, like SHOOTO, they don't have that much fighters, top-level fighters anymore. And like, for example, Taira fought Fukuda, who was a champion of SHOOTO, but he didn't get the fight for a whole year. So
is the UFC pretty direct? If you just ask them, will they tell you if they're interested or not?
They will tell you direct. I mean, I don't know to every manager, but to me, they do it because I know, especially Sean, I know for him for a long time. So he would tell me flat out. And Mick Maynard, too. Mick Maynard is very, I wouldn't say blunt, but very straightforward. If he's interested, he'll tell you. If you want to see more footage, he'll tell you, hey, do you have any more footage that I can review kind of stuff? Oh. That's why, then I'm going to get to the next topic then. Then why the hell is Rin Nakai's manager is not reaching out to,
Yeah. Well, Rin Nakai is just kind of this weird thing, too, where she's made like the same complaint that she's always made. Like, I don't have any training partners on Shikoku. If you want to be my training partner, email me. I'll pay for you to come out. You can train with me.
Exactly. Here's a tweeter she tweeted the other day that she's willing to pay a guarantee, which means it's the fee.
Yeah.
And on top of that, to join, like right now they're doing a campaign to join her gym. Nobody have to pay for joining fee. Nobody have to pay for monthly fee.
Well, my question is she broke or does she have extra money lying around? Because it seems to be 1 week she's broke and the other week she can pay for you to come train with her.
No, but then a few days later, her friends dropped off like some very expensive steak and horse meat. Here you go.
Yeah.
So they can eat. So she's always like asking for free food and,
Yeah. Then I had to laugh because some fan like, tweeted at her when she said that. Like, wouldn't it just be easier if you moved to Tokyo? Like, wouldn't it just be easier if you moved somewhere where you could have access to training partners and fight promotions?
Oh, yeah, of course. It would be
instead of living on a rural island and hoping that they all come out to you.
Well, but the problem is, I think anywhere she goes, her husband, coach Usami, has to go. So that's double expenses. And I don't know anything about them. I'm pretty sure that he has to earn living by being there, right? I don't know if he has a job or running a gym. So I think it's just impossible for her to go alone. And that's the main obstacle.
Yeah, well, it just doesn't seem to be working out. It hasn't been working for them for 10 years. They've constantly complained about no training partners and no money, but they seem to be, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I mean.
Oh, I know. And on top of that, she constantly complains and that like there's somebody else out there blocking her from getting fights, and they're thinking about filing a lawsuits and blah blah blah. But they have to understand that nobody gains from blocking her from getting fights. Nobody.
Yeah, I mean promotions would love to have her fight for them.
Yeah,
no one's trying to stop her from fighting. She's a ticket seller. I mean,
sure.
her social media is steadily growing.
every 4 or 5 tweets, she always have to mention how great Usami is. Everything Usami, the decision he makes are all correct.
Yeah,
I follow him or whatever that is, but that she has to realize that's a problem, you know.
it must be weird to write that about yourself.
Oh, I know. I mean, no, you know, who's writing that Twitter. No, that's what I'm saying. Somebody should go there with the camera, still filming them. It would be a great documentary to follow them for the next 5-10 years.
Oh my God, yeah. Just them in their empty gym with her collecting beetles.
Well, too bad though. Really, too bad. She's not getting any younger. So I mean, again, she has a choice to go to Invicta or One, or there's so many places she could have been approached.
Do anything. Go back to Pancrase. Go to Deep. Go to RIZIN. Do anything.
Or Bellator. They'll pay her well.
They'd love her.
Yeah, I mean, that's too bad. You know. Well, anyway, so we always have to finish with Miss Rin Nakai update.
Wait, I want to add one more thing.
Okay, what is it? Yeah.
Last week we brought up Kubo.
Oh.
And we said that we would look into Kubo.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about it. Let's look at the Kubo.
Mr. Looking into Kubo, I now know why Sakakibara wants him in RIZIN. This guy. First off,
Kubo.
First off, Sakakibara is obsessed with YouTubers, and Kubo's a YouTuber, and he has a semi-famous wife named Sarah.
Yeah.
And they have a YouTube channel with like 150,000 subscribers. So I mean, 39 million views, pretty popular. But this guy is weird. Okay, so
right now this girl is weird, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Guy is weird. Which both weird, isn't it? Oh,
so his wife comes from a super rich family.
Okay.
And when I say rich, she doesn't know how to wash her own hair.
Oh, geez.
Because she goes to a beauty salon 3 times a week since she was a child.
Oh, okay.
And she bought her brother a Ferrari for a birthday present.
Really?
So we're talking that kind of money. like they bought a pet monkey. So they have like a pet monkey.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it says that she is the real. She even claimed that she's a super rich, like a daughter of the super rich family, right?
And so they got married and then divorced. And then I think they got back together again.
Okay.
And my friend pointed this out to me. There's this really weird event that happened where apparently she told him that she wanted to start making adult videos.
Yeah, I read that, yeah.
And he went to Twitter to ask his followers how to talk her out of it. And so, yeah, just a bunch of stuff like that. And someone told me, I think, that he used to make a lot of money investing, and then he lost all of his money.
He lost it all, right? Yeah.
And she made him shave his head on a YouTube video as part of like the shame of losing his money. So they seem like a pretty crazy couple, and if they keep it up, they might need to become a weekly segment of just like what are the Kubos up to.
That's so funny, though. I mean, maybe that's what they're looking to do, right?
Well, that's my thing, because she has her own YouTube channel that is like not popular at all. And I think part of me just she wants to be famous, and by getting back together with Kubo, she's like, oh, I get way more attention this way. So maybe that's why she came back.
That's too funny.
I mean, the fact that she wants to make AV videos, she's a YouTuber, she just seems to be really want attention. And getting a RIZIN fight seems the way to get it.
I wonder. I mean, she could afford to buy a brother Ferrari, so she has all the money in the world. But this is the way she wants to make herself famous. She could do something more interesting, like open more different business, or do NPO, or do something good for the world. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, but that'd be actual work and less fun.
Right. So she just want to have fun, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta start researching on her, find out what her fathers do, and I'm pretty sure I can find out. You know.
Well, I think I think her grandfather was Russian.
Ah. Well, but is the grandfather's the one who made the money?
Oh, I don't know who made the money, but I think she said an insane thing. The reason she didn't wash her own hair is because she was afraid she'd get robbed while she was doing it. And so.
Is the Japanese?
There's also the possibility that she's one of those people that pretends like she's a lot richer than she is.
That I was just gonna say, right? Do you think
because there's all those people that like go out and they like rent a Ferrari for a day and film a YouTube video?
Yeah, some people have.
So you have no idea,
right? Yeah. Huh. That's funny.
But so it makes sense. I mean, Sakakibara is obsessed with YouTubers, and they're YouTubers that are popular.
Mm-hmm.
They get a lot of attention, and they're going to be promoting RIZIN on their YouTube channel, which is something he's interested in.
Okay, all right, I found out. Her father runs manga kissa. You know, like a manga cafe.
Essentially an internet cafe in
like
the
an
US.
Internet cafe where you could sleep overnight and like read magazines and manga there. And
yeah,
it's really popular in Japan, right?
I have the misfortune of being taller than the average Japanese person, so I can see over the booths as I walk by, and manga kissas are disgusting.
Oh, I know, manga kissa. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's a popular business. I could see them making a lot of money. So yeah, well, I think interesting. I think then maybe we should do the bi-weekly Nakai Ring update and bi-weekly Mr. Mrs. Cool update and see what they're gonna do, because I'm pretty sure she's gonna start doing something weird, right? Since his fight's coming up soon.
Any person that wants to do porn who already has money raises a bunch of red flags. So I think this could be interesting.
Right. So let's add that to our, segment. Let's talk about her and husband every time. Let's see what they're going to do.
Sounds good.
All right. So that's it for today. I'm going to have to accommodate my son. He's bitching because his movie finished. He was watching King Kong versus Godzilla.
You got to put the next one in.
All right. All right. So I guess I see you in 2 weeks.
Yep. See you then.
All right. Thank you, Charlie.
Bye.
Bye-bye.